could have been the original attempt, one of the original attempts. I really would like to see what's at the bottom of that shaft.
Based on numerous recent discoveries this year, the team has good reason to believe that this 80-foot-deep, decayed wooden structure may be connected to the original money pit.
For more than 2 centuries, Oak Island has remained one of the world's greatest treasure mysteries. Over 1,000 excavations have been carried out. More than $100 million has been spent. Generations of treasure hunters, explorers, and researchers have dedicated their lives to solving a secret hidden beneath this small island. Yet every time they believed they were on the verge of the truth, a new mystery emerged. Now, for the first time, everything may have changed. New scans and drilling surveys conducted by Rick Lagina and his team have revealed signs of a massive underground structure nearly 180 feet below the surface. According to preliminary reports, the chamber could measure an astonishing 120 feet long and 60 feet wide. Even more surprising, several independent experts who reviewed the data concluded that the formation does not appear to be a normal natural feature. After analyzing more than 4,000 data points, dozens of drilling reports, and years of excavation records, researchers arrived at a stunning possibility. If this structure is truly what some experts believe it to be, the treasure hidden inside could be worth as much as $470 million. But is this finally the legendary treasure that has fueled a 230-year search? Has Oak Island at last revealed its greatest secret? Or could an even bigger mystery still be waiting beneath the ground? Stay with us until the end, because we're about to examine the evidence that has captured the attention of treasure hunters and researchers around the world. And if you enjoy mystery documentaries, hidden history, and shocking discoveries, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next breakthrough on Oak Island could become one of the most extraordinary treasure finds in modern history. When Rick Lagina first began searching on Oak Island, he never imagined that the journey would consume more than 13 years of his life. Yet there was one thing that kept drawing Rick back to Oak Island year after year: a determination to uncover the truth behind a mystery that had fascinated treasure hunters for more than 2 centuries. Throughout the investigation, the team examined over 1,000 historical documents, maps, and records connected to the island's past. By that point, more than $100 million had already been invested in the search. Countless drilling operations had been carried out, and hundreds of boreholes had pierced the ground in an effort to reveal what lay hidden below. But each promising lead seemed to raise even more questions. The team uncovered fragments of ancient timber in some locations. In others, instruments detected traces of metal deep underground. Certain drilling sites suggested the presence of unexplained voids beneath the surface. Despite these intriguing discoveries, none of them provided the definitive evidence needed to solve the mystery. As the years passed, critics began arguing that Oak Island would never deliver real answers and would remain nothing more than a legendary treasure story. Rick refused to accept that conclusion. Believing that traditional methods had reached their limits, he pushed the search into a new era. The team adopted advanced 3D imaging technology, precision drilling techniques, and sophisticated data analysis tools. More than 500 gigabytes of survey information were collected and carefully reviewed. Specialists examined over 4,000 individual data points, determined not to overlook even the smallest detail. Then, everything changed. A new round of scans revealed something extraordinary nearly 180 feet beneath the island. The anomaly appeared massive. Preliminary models suggested a structure measuring approximately 120 feet in length and 60 feet in width, making it one of the largest underground features ever identified on Oak Island. At that moment, Rick made one of the biggest decisions of the entire search. Despite the enormous costs involved, he authorized a deeper investigation of the area. What seemed like another risky excavation could soon become something far more significant, the beginning of a discovery unlike anything previously found on the island. The scan that changed everything. Over the years, there had been many occasions when the Oak Island team believed they were on the verge of a breakthrough. More often than not, those expectations disappeared as quickly as they appeared. That was why nobody initially expected much when preparations began for another survey. This time, however, the technology being used was more advanced than anything employed before. High-resolution ground imaging, deep subsurface mapping, and geological modeling were combined to create the most detailed picture yet of what existed beneath the island. For weeks, experts worked through enormous amounts of information, studying more than 500 gigabytes of data and thousands of survey readings. Then came the moment that changed the atmosphere completely. An enormous and unusual signal appeared roughly 180 feet underground. Initially, researchers suspected it might be a natural geological feature. But as the information was reviewed again and again, the anomaly became harder to explain away. The shape did not resemble a typical underground cave. Computer models showed boundaries that appeared remarkably straight. Early estimates suggested dimensions of roughly 120 feet by 60 feet. Even more intriguing, some sections displayed patterns resembling right angles, features rarely associated with naturally formed rock structures. When the findings were presented inside the war room, the reaction was immediate. Several specialists described the anomaly as one of the most significant discoveries made on Oak Island in years. While some experts urged caution, others believed the signal could represent part of a much larger underground complex. Rick sat quietly as the images filled the screen. After years of searching, he was finally looking at evidence that seemed impossible to dismiss. And with every additional scan, one question became increasingly difficult to ignore. Had the team finally located the structure they had been searching for all along? The discovery of a massive underground chamber. As researchers continued examining the mysterious anomaly located 180 feet below the surface, expectations remained relatively modest. Most believed they might uncover an old tunnel, a forgotten shaft, or perhaps a naturally formed cavity. What emerged instead was far more surprising. After weeks of processing and modeling the data, experts produced a preliminary three-dimensional reconstruction of the underground feature. When the image appeared on the large screen in the war room, the room grew silent. The estimated structure measured nearly 120 feet long and 60 feet wide. Nothing of this scale had ever been identified beneath Oak Island before. Engineers and geologists quickly noticed another unusual characteristic. Several sections appeared strikingly straight, while certain areas displayed shapes resembling near-perfect right angles. That detail drew immediate attention. Natural underground chambers are typically irregular and unpredictable. The geometry shown in the model appeared far more organized than expected. For many experts, this significantly weakened the argument that the feature was simply a natural formation. As investigators compared the new findings with older records, another fascinating connection emerged. The structure appeared to be located within the same region where some of the strongest metallic readings and most puzzling drilling results had been recorded over the years. For the first time, separate clues that had remained disconnected for decades seemed to be forming a larger picture. Rick watched the screen carefully. After 13 years of searching, countless drilling operations, thousands of hours of work, and more than $100 million invested, it finally felt as though the team had identified a genuine target. Many began to wonder whether they were witnessing more than just another discovery. Perhaps they were standing at the threshold of the answer that generations of treasure hunters had been chasing. Shocking evidence from the drilling campaign. Once signs of the enormous underground chamber appeared in the data, a critical question remained. Was the structure actually there, or was the anomaly simply a misleading interpretation of the survey results? Determined to find out, Rick and the team launched an aggressive new drilling operation. Over the following weeks, numerous boreholes were drilled around the target area. Massive drilling rigs operated continuously as crews worked to gather physical evidence from deep underground. With every sample brought to the surface, anticipation continued to grow. The team understood that the answers they had been seeking for years could depend on what those drill cores revealed. Then at last, the first major breakthrough arrived. As drilling operations pushed deeper into the target area, the team began uncovering evidence that was difficult to ignore. At depths between roughly 180 and 200 feet, drill cores brought up pieces of wood that appeared far from ordinary. Preliminary examinations suggested that some of these fragments showed signs of being cut or shaped rather than forming naturally. If true, it would indicate that human activity may have taken place in this area long ago. But that was only the beginning. Several boreholes started producing unusual metallic readings. Tiny metal traces were identified in some samples, while underground sensors detected dense anomalies beneath the surface. When Emma Culligan and other specialists compared these findings with data collected over previous seasons, they discovered something remarkable. Some of the readings ranked among the strongest ever recorded during the Oak Island search. Then another unexpected pattern emerged. At multiple drilling locations, equipment appeared to break through solid layers and suddenly enter open spaces below. The results suggested that beneath the rock could be voids, passageways, or tunnel-like features. Similar indications appeared repeatedly across the survey area, raising the possibility that the team was looking at far more than a single underground chamber. The mood inside the war room quickly shifted. Every new sample, every fresh report, and every additional scan seemed to support the same growing theory. Emma Culligan's critical findings. The discovery of wood fragments, metallic anomalies, and possible underground voids had already generated enormous excitement. But on Oak Island, speculation means very little without scientific confirmation. That was why attention soon turned to Emma Culligan and the laboratory analysis. Samples recovered from the drilling operation were sent for detailed examination. Emma began by using XRF technology, short for X-ray fluorescence, a method commonly used to identify metallic elements within geological samples. Because hundreds of Oak Island samples had been tested over the years, she had a vast database available for comparison. As the results appeared, something immediately stood out. Several samples contained metallic signatures significantly stronger than what would normally be expected in ordinary rock formations. Emma carefully compared the new readings against previous drilling records and historical survey data. What she found was surprising. Some of the signals appeared stronger than anything the team had documented in years. To eliminate any possibility of error, the testing process was repeated multiple times. Samples were rescanned, equipment was recalibrated, and independent verification procedures were carried out. Yet the outcome remained largely unchanged. The evidence continued pointing in the same direction. When Emma finally presented her findings to the team, the atmosphere in the war room became noticeably tense. Charts, graphs, and laboratory results displayed on the screen suggested that something highly unusual existed beneath the target area. Rick Lagina and the rest of the team studied every detail carefully. After years of disappointments and false leads, nobody wanted to jump to conclusions. Still, one fact was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. These were not ordinary readings, and with every new test completed, confidence grew that whatever lay underground could be far more significant than anyone had originally imagined. The mystery of the 5 underground pathways. As additional drilling results and scans arrived, researchers began considering a possibility that had barely been discussed before. What if the massive chamber wasn't the only structure hidden below Oak Island? While reviewing advanced 3D imaging and deep scan data, experts identified a fascinating pattern surrounding the anomaly. Evidence appeared to suggest the presence of at least 5 separate underground routes extending away from the chamber. Initially, many believed they were simply natural fractures within the rock, but as computer models became more refined, those explanations started to seem less convincing. The orientation and alignment of these pathways attracted immediate attention. Most surprising of all, some appeared to lead directly toward the Money Pit, the legendary location that has captivated treasure hunters for more than 2 centuries. If that connection proved genuine, it could represent the first meaningful link between the newly discovered structure and the island's most famous excavation site. And the surprises didn't stop there. Additional scans suggested that other pathways extended towards Smith's Cove, an area long associated with mysterious wooden features and the controversial flood tunnel theory. Suddenly, an idea many people had dismissed years earlier was being reconsidered. When experts assembled a digital model of the entire system, another intriguing detail emerged. Several of the suspected tunnels appeared unusually straight. Natural fractures typically twist and vary unpredictably. These pathways seemed far more organized, leading some researchers to wonder whether they could be the result of intentional construction. Excitement inside the war room reached a new level. If the network truly existed, the team might be dealing with an extensive underground complex stretching hundreds of feet beneath the island, and that raised a question bigger than any they had faced before. Could someone have deliberately engineered this entire system centuries ago? Because if the answer was yes, Oak Island might contain one of the most sophisticated underground structures ever discovered. Examining more than 4,000 clues, As laboratory reports, drilling records, and scanning results continued to accumulate, the investigation entered a critical phase. The amount of information collected had become so vast that no single discovery could be considered in isolation. Inside the war room, massive displays were filled with drilling logs, metal analysis reports, underground imaging results, historical records, and thousands of other pieces of evidence. In total, more than 4,000 individual data points had been gathered. Alongside that, researchers had compiled over 500 gigabytes of survey information requiring careful review. Rick Lagina understood the significance of the moment. Rather than relying solely on the opinions of his own team, he invited more than 10 independent specialists to evaluate the evidence. Geologists, engineers, archaeologists, and underground structure experts all contributed to the investigation. For weeks, every detail was scrutinized. Scans were compared against older scans. Drilling results were cross-referenced with historical records. Laboratory findings were reviewed repeatedly. At times, disagreements broke out among the experts. No one wanted to reach conclusions too quickly. But as the analysis continued, a remarkable pattern began taking shape. The enormous chamber located nearly 180 feet underground, the possible network of 5 tunnels, the metallic anomalies, the recovered wood fragments, the indications of underground voids. One by one, these seemingly unrelated discoveries began fitting together. What once appeared to be scattered clues now looked increasingly like pieces of the same puzzle. Experts believe the evidence is converging. As discussions continued, many of the specialists reached a similar conclusion. For the first time in years, multiple independent lines of evidence seemed to be pointing toward the same location and the same explanation. Rick sat quietly, focused on the screen before him. The realization was beginning to sink in. This might not be another promising lead destined to fade away. It could be something much larger. When news of the massive underground structure first emerged, one question immediately dominated the conversation. Was this truly a hidden treasure vault? Or was it simply an unusual geological formation, creating the illusion of something extraordinary? Determined to find the answer, a team of engineers and experts began the next stage of the investigation. With new evidence continuing to emerge, a team of engineers, geologists, and archaeologists returned to the data for another detailed review. For weeks, they carefully examined scan results, drilling records, and three-dimensional models. The deeper they looked, the more difficult it became to explain the discovery as a simple natural formation. One feature immediately stood out. Several scan images revealed remarkably straight lines and sharply defined sections. Normally, underground caves and natural voids form irregular shapes over thousands of years. Yet here, some areas appeared surprisingly structured. In certain locations, researchers even identified patterns that resembled near-perfect right angles. The 3D models only made the mystery more intriguing. Instead of looking random, parts of the structure seemed organized, almost as though they had been deliberately designed. Because of these unusual characteristics, some engineers began considering the possibility that the feature could be man-made. But geometry was not the only thing attracting attention. The strongest interest centered on several high-density zones detected within the structure. Emma Culligan's laboratory findings, combined with survey data, pointed to metallic concentrations far above what would normally be expected underground. Some specialists noted that if a hidden vault or storage chamber existed beneath Oak Island, such readings would not necessarily be unexpected. Another factor strengthened the theory. The chamber appeared to sit in the same region where investigators had previously recovered wood fragments, detected powerful metal signals, and identified possible tunnel systems. It increasingly looked as though all of these clues might be connected to a single location. Inside the war room, the mood had become more intense than ever. No one was claiming that treasure had been discovered. However, many experts agreed that so many unusual indicators appearing together could hardly be dismissed as pure coincidence. How the $470 million estimate was calculated when reports surfaced suggesting that the mysterious underground chamber could contain assets worth as much as $470 million, many observers assumed the number was little more than speculation. But according to those involved in the investigation, the estimate was based on extensive analysis rather than guesswork. The calculations began with the discovery itself. Survey scans had identified a massive anomaly nearly 180 feet beneath the island. Early modeling estimated dimensions of roughly 120 feet long and 60 feet wide, making it one of the largest underground targets ever identified on Oak Island. And if you enjoy mystery documentaries, hidden history investigations, and incredible discoveries, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.